I have never breathed a breath of air on this planet when I was not a U.S. citizen. I've never been naturalized. It was the process of being born that made me a U.S. citizen.
Senator Ted Cruz defending himself against claims he may not be eligible to be president because he was born in Canada. And it's time now for our Sunday Group syndicated columnist George Will, Bob Woodward of the Washington Post, Laura Ingraham, editor-in-chief of the website LifeZette, and Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. Well, we ask you for questions for the panel, and we got a bunch about Trump questioning whether or not Cruz is a natural-born citizen. Here's one. Rob Hogan tweeted this: why does Trump and media insist on talking about another non-issue? Stick to real issues. And Glenna Palmer sent this on Facebook. If place of birth didn't matter with Obama, why should it matter with Cruz? Laura? How do you answer Glenna and Rob?
Well, Ted Cruz's mother was born in the United States. Ted Cruz never renounced his U.S. citizenship. His mother did not live the requisite 5 years, according to Canadian law, to even request Canadian citizenship. But I will say, as long as Ted Cruz feels like he has to answer questions about this, what I think has driven Ted Cruz up in the polls in Iowa is somewhat diminished, because I think people who don't really follow this all that closely will get their heads really wrapped around this issue. Like, well, wait, he was born in Canada? Like, and I think people sort of take this as an issue that really is a disqualifier. I do not believe it is. Paul Clement is one of the smartest legal minds in Washington.
Former Solicitor General.
Yes, also, you know, we both clerked on the Supreme Court different years. This is a joke, according to him. One
of the things I have to say I enjoyed this week was John McCain saying, well, this might be a legitimate issue.
He's most likely a Rubio supporter, so when
yeah, but
Trump,
part of that also is, as much as he dislikes Trump, he really hates Cruz.
He really hates Cruz. Cruz came on a radio show and said, look, he's gonna endorse Rubio any day now. So this is McCain's way of getting back at the wacko birds, as he called Ted Cruz, famously after the green eggs and ham soliloquy on the Senate floor. So there's bad blood there all the way around.
But you know, it is interesting, as you pointed out, Cruz is feeling the need to respond to this, and it's gotten such traction that this week the Cruz campaign released a document. Let's put it up on the screen. This is the birth certificate for Ted Cruz's mother, Eleanor, documenting the fact that she was born in Delaware. Clearly, Juan, Cruz feels he can't ignore this.
I don't think he can ignore it at this point, because it's now solidly established as a media story. It's everywhere. And I do agree with what Laura said. I think lots of people, including voters, are saying, oh, he was born in Canada? That's news to me. It's not news to us around here, but it might be news to them. And again, I don't think there's much of a legal argument here, but the fact is it's never been litigated, never been to the Supreme Court, as Trump pointed out to you. So what we have here is the enemy of my enemy is my friend when it comes to John McCain. Because John McCain has no love for Donald Trump. Donald Trump called him a loser for getting captured in Vietnam. But remember, what you have here is Cruz is a guy who's campaigned against fellow Republicans through the Senate Conservative Fund. He's a guy who has called Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, a liar on the floor. So his own friends, his own Republican caucus have a strong distaste for Ted Cruz, and I think that's what you're seeing from John McCain.
Chickens coming home to roost.
For Ted Cruz.
On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton seems to be cruising to the nomination, but there was a new release of emails on Friday, and this may cause some problems for her. Let's put this up on the screen. In 2011, when an aide was having trouble sending her material by a secure fax, she sent these instructions. If they can't, turn into non-paper with no identifying heading and send non-secure. Bob Woodward, why is this important?
Well, because here you have the Secretary of State in 2011 saying, let's subvert the rules, which say you've got to send something, presumably, I mean, it's very clear from the earlier emails that this was a security issue. And I've written about non-papers or no papers, and this is the way people in the government take the heading off and create something that exists.
Explain that to the rest of the world here.
Yeah.
What's a non-paper and what is taking the heading off?
By taking it off, it's just a piece of paper that has a bunch of paragraphs, and there's no classification, there's no subject, so it's not in the system, so no one can discover it. through Freedom of Information Act or some sort of subpoena. I mean, look, here is Hillary Clinton, somebody who worked on the staff of the Nixon Impeachment Committee. And what was the lesson? One of the lessons from that? Never write anything down. She did years of Whitewater investigations where she was the target. And here, many years later, she's saying, oh, let's subvert the rules, and writing it out herself. You know, whether that's some sort of crime, I think is not the issue. The issue is it shows she kind of feels immune, that she lives in a bubble and no one's going to ever find this out. Well, now we have.
George, I think it's fair to say that after, first of all, Bernie Sanders said, I'm tired of your emails, and then the Benghazi hearing, the email issues seem to be fading away. Does this revive it?
It keeps it going, and that matters, I think. I think the question really at the end of the day is a question of legality. The problem with this as a political issue, the force of an issue is often a function of its simplicity. And when the average voter hears about a server in a closet in Colorado, they say, I know what a closet is, I know what Colorado is, what's a server? And I think people are kind of unclear about that. But what this does is reinforce a pre-existing perception about the Clintons, that whenever they come trailing clouds of seaminess of some sort. And this also occurs in the context of the Petraeus precedent. Petraeus, former high military official, former director of the CIA, got in trouble for the mishandling of classified information. So at the end of the day, this comes down to the Justice Department. We know, we don't think, we know from the IRS example that the Holder Justice Department was eager to be complicit in covering up certain scandals. The question is, if the FBI makes a recommendation to the Justice Department about illegality, then the ball is in Loretta Lynch's court, and we'll see if she's a different kind of attorney general.
But going back many years, I've followed the Hillary Clinton, you know, what she does, and biography is character and behavior is character here. And when I read that, I was really surprised that she would type that out and say, let's send it non-secure. And, you know, maybe we'll get answers in fairness to her. It's not clear what this is about, what the talking points were and so forth.
But you know, in a sense, I mean, if it was supposed to be sent secure, and she is, as you say, subverting the law by saying send it, or at least the regulations, by sending it non-secure, isn't that?
The question is, what is it? I've tried to look into the record and figure out what was going on that day, and she was going to give a press briefing. Maybe it was talking points for a press briefing, and there may be no classified information in there. At the same time, she was meeting with the Russians, and maybe there was. So we'll see.
Remember, she hasn't released all of her emails either. Remember, she was supposed to reach a certain threshold by December 31st. She did not. Her staff said, we were working really hard. We were trying to. Lord knows what's in the other ones. And you are not allowed under federal law to act as your own declassifier of information. A GS-15 employee at the NSA tries to do this. Do we think that, why are you scowling? Do you think there'd be a legality issue?
Is in fact the person who decides if it's classified or not. Not only has she said this, the State Department has said it, the Justice Department has put out a memo saying this.
You're saying that Hillary Clinton's handling of this email situation is all, that's all cool. This is the way our government's supposed to work?
I agree with what Bob said. I don't think it's a legal issue.
Joe DeGeneva, former U.S. attorney, said on my radio show.
No, he said he doesn't know.
Joe DeGeneva said the FBI, Chris, is in on the verge of a major revolt. In right now with the way this issue is being handled. And I think George,
we should say former U.S. attorney.
George hit the nail on the head. This is a matter of legality. This goes to the heart of whether we can trust our government to be fully transparent when they're supposed to be and properly handle this kind of information.
I don't think the issue
and the professionals will have the final say on this.
You're lost in the weeds on this one. I think the voters really don't care. And I think that Jim Comey, the FBI director, is beyond reproach with regard to this.
The voters care about whether we're going to find out who she really is and what she did.
Yeah.
And this is one element of it.
All right. We have to take a break here. See you a little later.